Hey, everybody, welcome to the 18th episode of the Business of Style podcast, brought to you by the Beauty Council. I'm Greg Robbins, your host, and today I bring you Chavisa from the Mother Corp, talking about trauma in the workplace, how you can manage it, the best way to work with your clients when it comes to things like personal information and, all those admissions. Let's get on with this show. It's a good one. Hey, Chavisa, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a real pleasure having you here.
Thank you so much, Greg. It's such a beautiful opportunity to have a good conversation with you.
Looking very much forward to it. So give us an idea of the kind of work that you do and how you help people on a day-to-day basis.
I'd love to. I'm a trauma-informed consultant and coach. I own the business called the Mother Corp, and I provide trauma-informed education and resources and coaching to people. I have a background in interdisciplinary social sciences and a graduate diploma in adult education, but I also have certification as a divorce coach. And because I've worked with folks who are going through bad divorces, I also got certified in trauma recovery. And so I blend these together to be able to support people who are going through trauma to have skilled support as they navigate. And of course, I'm mindful that in your population working with beauty professionals, that so often people feel that when they interact with their beauty professionals, that it's an opportunity to have an informal confidant. And so, of course, beauty professionals are getting a lot of information about people's personal lives, some of which is challenging and some of which is traumatic. And so I want to be able to support beauty professionals to be able to, A, look after themselves, but also to be able to give good insights to the person who's in their chair in front of them so that both the beauty professional and their client can be in the best state possible.
Wow. Okay. Well, you hit the nail on the head there, because if you just flip through some Instagram or Facebook posts, very often you see hairstylists in particular, but more and more even just beauty professionals as a whole, begin to describe themselves as therapists, and having to bear the weight of their clients' trauma or ongoing personal concerns as part of their normal workday. I mean, typically they're in the business of cutting hair, coloring hair, fixing skin, doing nails, and now they're faced with somebody's life story or their challenges at home, personal or otherwise. So it's a great opportunity to talk about the ways in which professionals can manage that. Give us a couple of ideas around how people can improve their strategies when faced with these conversations.
Well, I think you're hitting the nail on the head. I mean, we've got these beautifully talented stylistic practitioners, but in their relationship with their clients, they're building rapport, they're building trusted relationships, and they're often ongoing. Like once somebody finds a hairdresser that they love, they go back to them again and again and again. And so you're starting to hear about people's details of their lives. I always like to do my work grounded in evidence-based information. And so I've been taking a good look at what the theory says about beauty professionals, especially since COVID. And I think as a society, we have a general approach to do disclosure with beauty professionals. And they've been discussed as informal confidants, that they take on a social responsibility, that they have blurred role boundaries. So I think often practitioners aren't entirely sure about how to navigate these blurred role boundaries. But also, I'm seeing like beauty professionals are reporting feeling undervalued or emotionally drained or in need of support in their roles. And I think this is a really interesting space that we start to unpack. And so part of what I'd love to do is to provide beauty professionals with a support, but coaching, and then also some education about how to look after themselves and also how to look after their clients. I'm really lucky because the trauma recovery training that I have is holistic and it's embodied. And of course, trauma sits in the body. So that means that how we attend to our bodies as we're going through stressors can either exacerbate or make it worse, or we can start to get grounded and situated and start to be able to manage the feeling, the big feeling state that's coming through. So I really want to be able to help beauty professionals gather skills to look after themselves and look after their clients in light of this kind of social space where there is a lot of disclosure and informal confidant behavior.
Yeah, it is such an incredible role that individuals in our industry play when they go into this informal confidant. And for the most part, I mean, unless somebody went ahead and got special training in that or went to school for it or is somehow knowledgeable about how to deal with it, pretty much nobody is really skilled in the proper management of receiving that type of disclosure from clients. So as people who are really not trained in that, we're kind of technicians, right? We know chemicals, we know skin pH, we understand how to form shapes. We don't really understand how to deal with trauma and how to even take care of ourselves. So can you help just define what trauma is? You've used the word a couple of times, and we all know what trauma is, but just describe it to us in the context of your work and how it manifests itself in a day to day hair salon or beauty salon.
Sure. So the simple definition of trauma is something that causes intense physical or psychological stress reactions. But I think often, we think about it as having serious injury or potentially a violence or the threat of death at the most extreme end of trauma. But what I like about more formal definitions of trauma is that they acknowledge the adverse effects on the individual's functioning and physical, social, emotional, and spiritual well being. And what I love about that is that it's really holistic. It's like if there's been a trespass to your physical body, if there's a social trespass, if there's an emotional trespass, but also spiritual, because of course we're whole beings. So it attends to all those nuances and layers of what it is to be alive. And then the other piece around trauma is that some people experience trauma as a one-time experience. So for example, you have a car accident, then that's like an incident. But for some people, it's extended trauma or living with trauma. And so that can often happen when people are dealing with gender-based violence or there's like a family violence issue, then that can be a really long, extended trauma that people are living with. And so I'm mindful of there's a whole range of what traumatizes people. But really, what I can help people with is to situate themselves in their bodies and be able to start to process and get resourced so that they are not alone with what they're experiencing and that they start to learn and develop skills that can support wellness and safety.
Okay, I really like what you just said there. So some practical tools that people could deploy when they're faced with either having their own trauma triggered, because I suppose that can happen, right? And also to work with and receive the trauma that may be, or I don't know if that's the right word, but what the revelation, let's say, or the conversations that are taking place between them and their client. So these are they real practical tools that they can kind of lean on and enable when these things start to happen to them?
Absolutely. So this is exactly where I want to help people is like understand how to get situated and grounded and take care of themselves moment to moment to moment. So what's unique about beauty professionals is that when you have someone in front of you in your chair, probably they're there for half an hour or an hour, but there's a period of exposure, but because of the profession, there's a frequency aspect as well where you may experience people disclosing things to you 3 times in a day. And so there's some compounding aspect to it as well. And so really it's about how to learn to take care of yourself in the moment so that you're able to look after yourself after lunch, to look after yourself when you go home, so that you're able to look after yourself in the evening. And so you're able to look after yourself the next morning.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. Not only frequency during the day, but then that client may come back in 6 weeks, and then you're sort of brought back into their personal dramas or whatever it is that's going on. So it becomes almost a rinse and repeat, so to speak, not to use a industry cliche, but it can kind of repeat itself. You talked about trends. You talked about two things that I found very interesting: boundaries and trespassing. Describe to me how that is initiated. In other words, to me, trespassing is someone, crosses a boundary, either knowingly or unknowingly. Are there ways to set up those boundaries more clearly so that we avoid this whole situation?
Again, we're talking about a profession that's societally known to have blurred role boundaries. So people, as a standard rule, if you talk to a person on the street, they would say, yeah, it's reasonable to talk to your hairdresser about whatever's going on. So we already have that blurry gray zone. And so what I help people do is learn to develop communication skills around being clear about what those boundaries are, or how to effectively give care and compassion and empathy and encouragement for the person that they're working with to get grounded, so that basically it doesn't steamroll or it doesn't snowball or it doesn't get more and more intense. So I can help people gather skills so that they can acknowledge, identify, and hold respectful space, but also not help it the disclosure flourish, so to speak. Does that make sense to you?
It does. So, in other words, to be able to recognize when these things are happening to you so that you don't get caught by surprise or suddenly wake up very sad or exhausted one day wondering what's going on with you. You're able to identify these things as they come at you. Is that right?
Yes, and how to give meaningful feedback so that you can support people where they're at. And just, I think so often as a society, people aren't necessarily seen or recognized. And so just gathering some communication skills to just be able to say, that sounds really challenging. I can really hear that that is really, intense for you right now. And when people get recognized, they tend to settle down,
Hmm.
because I think we're, in some ways, some of our suffering is alleviated when another person can mirror back and echolocate, is the term I love. But when another person can just echolocate and say, I see that this is what you're experiencing. And when a person is recognized, they tend to settle down and get grounded. And then I can help people learn communication to support that grounding and getting situated in the body, so that again, the client is returning into their body and into their bodily vessel. And in that way, they start to settle down.
Interesting. Is there an opportunity for a beauty professional to help a client seek help or find ways to alleviate their own personal situations so that they can heal themselves? In other words, to be able to refer to somebody such as yourself? And is
I
that
think
a role they should play?
Well, I think it's one way that we can alleviate burden. If, as a beauty professional, you have a resource that you know is useful and you provide it to your client, then in some ways you've done what you can do. You've passed on information that's valuable and useful, and it will enable that person to get the support and resources that they would benefit from. So I think actually that's a really beautiful way to offer care to a client. And I certainly do that in my practice. As a trauma informed consultant and coach, I'm more than happy to work with your members and provide them with the support that they would benefit from and help them learn skills that will advance their well-being and safety. But I also offer my services to their clients. So let's say a beauty professional has a client in their chair who's having a really challenging time. I would be more than happy for my contact information to be given to them. So in this way, the client is able to access loving support as they navigate through challenge. And I, as a trauma informed coach, am very comfortable talking to people about trauma. Um, it doesn't cause me any hardship, and it gives me joy to be able to support people. And part of how I envision my service and part of why I formed my company was to alleviate and take weight out of the network. So instead of a beauty professional struggling with a client before them, I would love to be put in touch with that person so that I can help take care of them so that they are more grounded and well.
I can tell you that that would be very, very welcome for many individuals that I know in the industry who simply just aren't equipped, have their own thing going on, are busy, or don't feel that they're the right person to help their client. So that's a wonderful gift. Very, very generous of you.
That's my pleasure. It's such a beautiful opportunity to talk with you, Greg. And in terms of people being able to get in touch with me, may I share my contact information?
Please do. I was just going to ask how everybody can get a hold of you and the best way to reach you.
So I'm Chavisa, and my company is the Mother Corp. It's www the Mother Corp corp.com is the website. And my email is similar, the Mother Corp, corp at proton, proton.me. It's a secure email coming out of Switzerland. And because of the area that I work in, I always try and ensure that there's high security. The service that I do is confidential and one on one coaching. So people have freedom to be able to talk about whatever they're grappling with in their work environments, their interpersonal relationships, their personal aspects of their lives, so that people are able to get confidential support. And I always try and work with people very responsively. So I try and make a very agile service so people can get support as soon as possible.
This is wonderful, Shavisa. Thank you so much. I very much appreciate everything you have to offer and looking forward to having you help us, our members, and their clients navigate to a better self.
Indeed, I think at the end of the day, the more we can look after enhancing our safety and wellness, the better we have for today, but also a future trajectory. And that's really important to me.
Can't agree more. Thank you so much for joining us again today.
Thanks, Greg.